Welcome back to another session of Daily Current Affairs. My name is Aishwarya and I am representing Gallant IAS. Now let's move on to our today's topic. We have a controversy on our sample survey about ASEAN, the challenge and the future. ISRO launching PSLV C56 carrying a Singapore satellite and Rajasthan gig workers ride bell. Now moving on to first, I told you about a controversy of the sample survey. In the last class, I have told you about the government replacing the currently Standing Committee of Economic Statistics to a Standing Committee of Statistics. Now, there are two articles in today's newspaper talking about the controversies in case of the sampling survey. Some suggesting reforms in it and for a new committee, and another part stating that this is a valid survey. Okay, now let's look on to the two sides of the controversies. Now, this is a maximum I could club both articles together. So, please stay with me. Problems found with the survey. Now, between 2011 to 2021, there has been 11 surveys conducted. Now, the author has found issues with these 11 surveys. There is actually underestimation of the urban population, overestimation of the rural population, and also underestimate the improvements across the country. So, these three are the issues that the author has found with the present for the replaced committee of survey data. Now, the author also mentions that there is refusal to part with information. Now, you see, consider a rich household where the income is higher. They don't give out the data like other rural people do. So, there is actually an incomplete data as well. They refuse to part with the data, and the author is stating that the response rate falls as the income level increases. Also, the author states there is a usage of outdated survey method in the case of conducting surveys such as National Sample Survey, National Family Health Survey and Periodic Labour Force Survey. Periodic Labour Force Survey, they have systematically underestimated India's development. So, this outdated method of conducting these many surveys are led to systematic underrepresentation or underestimation of India's development. Now, what is the other side of this? How do they justify this national survey? They told that this NSS, like National Family Health Survey or Periodic Labour Force Survey, is actually looking into the estimates or primary estimates of the socio-economic development and not into the number of households or the population. And these are just the number of households or the population are just addition to the socio-economic indicators or the response of the sample design of the survey. Now, so when the data user or the user of this socio-economic development data, they actually adjust the survey separately along with the rural and urban areas based on the census. Now, which means that the survey, the socio-economic development survey is adjusted with the census to get estimates separately for the rural and urban areas. It also estimates the number of households based on the NSS are in close agreement with the census based number of households. This is what the author in this has suggested, which means that the survey what they have estimated with the census, which they have adjusted with the census, is inconsistent with the number of households based on the survey they have found. Okay, and also told you about that the other party stated about using an outdated sampling framework. The author says here is that the survey primarily depends upon the population census for sampling purpose, and they use urban frame survey blocks as an updated method of samplings, and this covers all the towns in India. It corrects the frame of present rate of urbanization as well. So, which means that the sampling survey is always updated, and it's updated via the urban frame survey block, which includes all the towns in the country, and also it corrects the frameworks of urbanization. So, this author states that there is no need for restructure or overhaul of the survey, but there is a reality to this as well. We find a lot of errors in this within this survey. That is only the drawback the author has mentioned here. Now, moving on. This is from the second article, how the National Family Health Survey underestimate the India's development. So, they state that the National Family Health Survey, that is the NFHS, through the rural bias in terms of representation. That is how there is underestimation of India's development, and these are heavily dependent on our census based. census based estimation. This census actually overestimates the rural population. As I have told you, the rural population are overestimated, the urban population are underestimated in case of census and other such surveys. But the examination of this National Family Health Survey doesn't show any systematic bias to the rural population or overestimation of the rural population. This is actually a bit confusing because we find both sides of controversy stating this. And also we know that National Family Health Survey 5 rounds has been conducted. Now there is differences among this National Family Health Survey. In National Family Health Survey 2, the data are overestimated in case of rural. In National Family Health Survey, it's underestimated. And only in National Family Health Survey 1 and 4, the data are similar to the World Bank established data, okay, in case of urban projection. Now that is how the differences go within the survey system. Now, how to minimize error? Now I told you that the higher percentage of the urban or the elite rich population doesn't give response. This is higher in urban areas rather than in rural areas. Also, we need to assess appropriate weights in the urban sample. Like the sampling means that the different kinds of questionnaires or what comes under the division of the population or the character of the people comes under the samples and assessing appropriate weights for that. Also, there are two important components within the survey, that is the sample design and the data quality. Now, the sample designs can be improved via adopting scientific sample designs. Now, like I told you, there was urban framework of sample blocks. These are some of the scientific designs by which the sample design can be improved. And also, like in rich households, they do not give adequate representation or response. So, such can be developed by tapping alternative resources. Now, we also told about examining the coverage of UFS framework because of underestimation of the rural population. Now, following all these models or minimizing the error using of scientific survey methods, we can actually improve our present rate of survey and actually approximately we can get more reliable data. Okay. Now, moving on to the next topic of today, that is ASEAN. I can't tell everything about ASEAN because ASEAN is a very important in our GS2 about bilateral relations between India and ASEAN. Also, the grouping is very important in case of our Southeast Asian groupings. Now, I'll tell you the number of countries and how India is related to ASEAN. There are a lot of pillars and all. I'll deal with that in coming days. Now, ASEAN consists of 10 members. These are the 10 members. They represent the entire Southeast Asia. We have Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei and Cambodia. With this 10, we need to actually also look into ASEAN plus 3. ASEAN plus 3 comes with South Korea, China and Japan. You need to improve that. South Korea, China and Japan. These come to ASEAN plus 3. Now, we also need to know about ASEAN plus 6. That is this entire category of group. We have the ASEAN plus 3, again an additional of 3 members like Australia, India and New Zealand, which comes on ASEAN plus 6. That is ASEAN plus 6 to India connection. Okay, so this is actually kind of trade blocks, whereas India and other countries actually trade with ASEAN as a group. We have India-ASEAN FTAs, free trade agreements as well. That is a very important topic which you need to cover as well. Now, I'll tell you about what the article is stating about. Recently, 56 foreign ministers meeting of the ASEAN actually took place. Also, the post-ministerial conference took place in Jakarta, Indonesia in mid of July. The author mentions about some of the challenges that ASEAN is presently facing. There is impact of COVID, pandemic, economic slowdown of the economy, climate change, Cold War-like phenomena between US and China are some of the challenges that ASEAN is currently facing. Now, Indonesia is the present chair of ASEAN and also portrays ASEAN as the epicentrum of growth. Remember this like writing like Indonesia, if you have a question regarding ASEAN, you starting with a statement like this, it's actually boost the answer. Now, let us look into some internal differences going on between ASEAN. Now, first thing is Myanmar coup. Many of the countries within the ASEAN is not interested in Myanmar doing a coup like this. So there is a difference in this and ban of Myanmar as well. Despite all this, Thailand is still having a bilateral relationship with Myanmar and also having talks with Aung San Suu Kyi, and all is some of which causes deep-rooted internal difference again. And also Chinese issue. See here, many of the countries within ASEAN is heavily or virtually dependent upon China. We can specifically talk about Laos, Cambodia and all, Myanmar, who are heavily and virtually dependent upon China. Philippines, due to the basic issues of permanent court of arbitration that I talked about in my late videos, there is a caution of Philippines towards China because of the South China Sea issue. But there are, like, most of the ASEAN countries are heavily dependent upon China, as I told you, because of which the issues surrounding the South China Sea hasn't been solved yet, or they haven't reached a consent yet, because these are heavily dependent upon China and they can only do regarding what China is stating about. Also, I told you recently there was a NATO summit in Vilnius, that is in Lithuania. They also portrayed after Russia, China is emerging as a big threat to their security, to their interests, to their politics as well, and China is hindering their ambition as well. That is what the Western world has talked about NATO, and the author is specifying again about the Chinese issue in this article. Now, ASEAN as a whole, they want to promote an ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. That is one of the recent goals and aims of ASEAN, and under this they identify 4 different areas like the maritime cooperation, connectivity, UN, following the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and economic cooperation. Now, these are the 4 identified pillars under the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Now, the 5-point consensus. This was given out in April 2020 after the Myanmar coup. Okay, so under this, the 9 ASEAN countries want Myanmar to adopt these 5 criteria, 5-point consensus provided under this. An immediate end to the violence in Myanmar, dialogue among all the 10 member countries of ASEAN, appointment of a special envoy and humanitarian assistant by ASEAN to Myanmar, and also a special envoy's visit to Myanmar to meet with all parties. So, this was the 5-point consensus. The author states that there is a splitting between the ASEAN members in some of the issues, and however they are trying to project this 5-point consensus that all the parties are together, the splitting and the differences between ASEAN is very visible. That is what the author is saying. Now, there is specifically a role for India to play in ASEAN. India states that ASEAN as a whole, as a regional grouping, is very important, and the unity between ASEAN would hold a place in the Indo-politics as well. And our external minister S. Jaishankar talks about or highlights the convergence between their ASEAN, I told you ASEAN, outlook on the Indo-Pacific and India's own Indo-Pacific ocean policy, because there are more issues or there are more similarities between both. So, our external minister S. Jaishankar is talking about a convergence as well, and talked about working in new areas other than the 4 which is mentioned, like maritime connectivity, our sustainability and economic growth. Also to focus in other areas like cyber, finance and maritime security. So, the next ASEAN summit will comes in Jakarta in September. Hopefully, majority of these issues might be resolved by then, and ASEAN can still project to be one of the strong members in the regional or Indo-politics. Now, moving on to a very smaller topic, that is ISRO to launch PSLV C-56 carrying Singapore's new imaging satellite. It will go via PSLV C-56. It will be launched from Sriharikota along 6 other satellites. This Singapore's new satellite is an all-weather provides all-weather like our day and night coverage. It is capable of imaging 1 meter resolution as well. They are also carrying other satellites like nano satellites and other Polaroid kind of stuffs, such locations, and advanced 3U nano satellites as well. They are carrying with the other 6 satellites as well. Now, this is the last topic. Rajasthan Gig Workers Right Bill. Now, in India as all, there is no bill or there is no act for gig workers alone. This is the first such act that has been introduced by state government Rajasthan. Rajasthan Platform Based Gig Workers Registration and Welfare Bill. Now, we need to know what all are mentioned in the bill. Now, this bill talks about 2 groups, aggregators who are actually intermediate between a buyer and a seller, and also the primary employees working in the gig economy. So the bill applies to both these parties and also talks about creation of a welfare board. This welfare board consists of the state governments, the representatives from the gig economy and also from the civil society. They are also talking about setting up a welfare fund. I will talk about the welfare funds, and registered platform, registration for the gig workers and aggregators. Like if any worker is working starting in an app based work, like in any, if I am starting working in an app based platform, at that minute itself I can actually register to this. That is what it has been set up, and also for aggregators, primary employees and also social security benefits. Usually for gig workers there is no social security benefits like PF or maternity benefit reliefs or minimum wages, nothing. So they are actually also talking about setting up of a social security benefit for these workers. This welfare board will maintain the database of companies and other workers, and each worker will get a unique ID, and this unique ID will be there with them till the end. The board will maintain database of the companies as well as give the workers a unique ID. Now, where do they get the funds from? First, they talked about addressing the social security and all. They get the fund from the individual workers. They will get a cut from the contribution from the individual workers. They will also get some from the state government and also from the welfare cess. This welfare cess is taken from each transaction. A cut will be get from 1 to 2%. This will be taken from the aggregator. This cut won't exceed 2% and this cut won't be less than 1%. That is the welfare cess. So the fund will come from the employer, the aggregators welfare cess, and the state government is what the funds will come from. Also the bill states that all the person, as I have told you, all the person has the right to be registered the minute they start working in any app based platform, regardless of what the work they have, what the duration of work hours. It may be from 1 to 4 hours or 1 to 8 hours, it doesn't matter, and the work type doesn't matter. The minute they start working in an app based platform, they can actually register to this. And also I told you about social security benefits, which covers accidental insurance, health insurance and other benefits. This other benefits is not mentioned in clarity, that there is some opposition regarding the other benefits which is not clearly mentioned in the bill. They are also talking about grievance redressal for entitlements, payments and benefits. They can file the petition or file the grievance online or offline. The employers can object to this grievance within 90 days before an appellate authority. Also the act talks about aggregated duties. They have to deposit the welfare cess, that I talked to you about the funds in welfare cess, 1 to 2% of the cut from each transaction. They have to deposit this welfare fund on time, update the database of the workers, also document if there is any variation in this. If they fail to do any of this, they can be fined with rupees 5 to or 50 lakhs. They can be fined up to this. So this is all what the bill is stating. We are not sure to what find more on it. This is just a basic, all is a bill. Now if it's made into an act, it will be very good for the gig workers in Rajasthan, and if it's adopted in India nationally, this would be a boost to all the gig workers out there. Okay, they will get like grievance redressal, like for working of a central government employee or a private worker which is working in an established company, they will get the social security benefits, they could state their grievance, they could get the minimum wages and everything. It will be boost for the gig working economy. Now this is a previous year question about gig economy. Explain the role of gig economy in the process of empowerment of women. Now you can write a suitable introduction of what is gig economy. You can explain that, or the population, like majority of the people work under the gig economy. You can give a data regarding that in the introduction. Now role, we have flexible working hours, we can work from home, we can do work from home. It is a demand driven work culture. Also there is diverse job opportunity. It is not restricted to 1 or 2 fields. You can get diverse amount of opportunities. It gives economic empowerment to women and also breaks gender stereotypes. Okay, now there are challenges as well. There is digital divide. For this you need internet connectivity, proper mobile system, laptops, etc. So there is a gap with digital divide. Also wage gap between men and women, and also wage gap, there is no minimum wage gaps for gig workers mentioned in here. Also no social security benefits. Like in India, there is no bill for gig economy and not act for gig economy workers as yet. So they actually face all these challenges of social security benefits, no wage gap and digital divide. In the conclusion, you can actually talk about the recently talked Rajasthan gig economy workers bill. That will be a boost conclusion, and you can write a perfect answer to this. So this is all for today. Thank you, and let's meet again tomorrow. You can get the PDF of this in our Telegram channel, Gallant IAS Pathashala. Thank you.